Welcome back. Another in our series of What's Going On in the Community, filmed right here on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Our guest today is Jeff Massey, the administrator for Washington County, Florida. Jeff's a regular visitor to the show, and if you're a regular viewer, you certainly recognize Jeff. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jeff Massey about, well, what's going on in the community. Still getting over the vestiges of Hurricane Michael, now almost 2 years ago, certainly dealing with COVID-19 currently. There are certainly all kinds of issues in the community. Talking about good news today. So if you're a regular viewer of all of the news cycles, here's where you can get some good news. Jeff is going to be talking about some real positive developments in Washington County. We've got financial windfalls. We've got opportunities for broadband. We've got all kinds of positive things. And I think that it's very important, especially in this challenging time, to be able to focus on that positivity whenever possible. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Jeff Massey. How are you?
Good, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you were able to come back. We talked originally about you coming on a semi-irregular basis whenever there was something to talk about. You said, be careful what you wish for, because lately there's been lots of good stuff, and that's music to my ears. We're talking about positive stuff that's going on. You gave me a call and said, listen, we got some really great news. We're dealing with all kinds of stuff. Let's talk about what you came here to talk about.
Well, we've, post-Michael, and we talked about this before, I think, on another segment, how, it was very easy to see the front end of that and the devastation and the issues it caused in the community. Then we moved into COVID, and everybody's familiar with that. Everybody's dealing with the same thing no matter where you're at in our country.
COVID was the great leveler, regardless of your socioeconomic situation.
Correct.
Yeah, a disease is a disease.
So, there's always a silver lining in dark clouds, and so what we found here is that after Michael and the level we had of the devastation, funding opportunities became available to us. And as you know, and the citizens that live here know, that we're a rural county, 600 miles of dirt roads, and so when FEMA came in and looked at our roads, they made their recommendations and says, if you'll do these things, we'll reimburse you. So we've been doing that, but we figured out how to make this thing work for us, because we're doing all the road work ourselves in-house with our public works. We can do it cheaper than if we contracted it out. And they're doing a really good job. I'm very pleased with what we're seeing so far. And so the good thing about that is we came up with a work plan and how we're going to do this. And so we have our county divided into 5 work zones. And within those work zones...
Now, are those correspond to the 5 commissioners?
We did. It was just, they were already there and they made sense. So we just left our current work districts as our 5 zones. And so within each zone, we have PWs in there, numbered PWs that represent a certain amount of roads.
Now, what's a PW?
It is our mechanism we use to identify the project. Okay,
Gotcha. So
5.1, we have 5.2, 5.3, and so we put that PW there, and so so we started following our work plan, and we're getting it done. The great thing is, for example, we just completed 5.1, which was in Commissioner Joyner's district, and it was a $7.6 million PW. And we're eligible for 50% of that up front. Once it's obligated and FEMA says, okay, this money's here, when do you want it? We can go ahead and get half up front. And so that's what we did. And what that does for us, it helps us cover expenses, because, we're dishing out the rock and the dirt and the labor and the fuel and all that kind of stuff up front. So it helps us. So, but the great thing is, on the backside, you have the rest of that money that we can now turn and apply through mitigation to probably put 2 inches of asphalt on a lot of those roads. So as we complete these projects, we're going to be looking at doing some of this simultaneously. We'll be finishing up the PWs in the county at the same time. On the back end, we're coming and paving behind them, 2 inches of asphalt. We have different types of roads here. We have roads that have to be built to Green Book standards, and which requires 6-foot shoulders, but we have many roads that are a lot smaller where it's difficult to do. And we're going to capture some of those as well, because our goal is to cut our maintenance costs and improve the quality of travel in the county. And that ties into a lot of other different caveats along the way. So we're pretty excited about it. And now we're starting to see the money. We've received $6.5 million since we started receiving money from Michael. But there was an upfront delay getting all the information in the system being processed, because it goes to the state, it goes to the federal government, comes back to the state. There's this kind of thing going on till it comes here, and they'll obligate the money. Now we're starting to see that money trickle in. So $6.5 million is not a lot of money in the big scheme of things. In fact, in the next 2 years, we will have over $90 million obligated to this county over the next 2 years. Now, keep in mind what I just said, we're entitled to 50% of that up front. So, I can get me $42 million to do this work, but we don't want it all at one time. Because once you pull the trigger on these projects, you're under a timetable. You're under overall timetable for the length of the project to have all this work done. But once you get that obligated money to you, that 50% up front, now you have so many days. So we have to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves, and that's part of having the work plan and managing the whole process.
Let's back up and unpack this, because I'm not a real smart guy. So let's kind of take this a bite at a time. First of all, what you guys are proposing, and which you are executing, is really contrary to what usually makes sense. We usually figure the free enterprise system, the for-profit market generally is going to do a better job than government, because government guys are paid by the hour. They can lean on shovels. All of the stupid jokes that have been made in the past.
We don't do that here.
And, well, that's what I'm getting at. So if you guys are turning that around and actually being more efficient, more profitable, and doing things cheaper and better by not going out for bids, it would seem like that's a perfect world in which to live. So when you're a contractor, you generally have what's called cost plus. You've got your cost to do the job, and then you've got your profit margin. So whether it's 20% or 40% or whatever that number is, the higher the better, for those of you that are not as familiar with math as we are maybe. That is your money. So now you're saying, because you're able to do this job cheaper, you've got a surplus of money when you get done, so now you can do more to improve that project. In the case of a road,
Correct.
You're putting asphalt where you would not have been able to afford to do that. Not only is it brilliant, but it brings to mind, how are you able to do this? Let me take a wild guess. You've got some business people who are sitting on that board who are looking at this as business people, because in many cases they're doing those exact, you've got an engineer, you've got a construction guy, you've got all these people. So correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you've just got a good group of people who are able to make these decisions and now operate the county as a business.
We do, and that's the way we look at it. As we've said before, you can't spend money you don't have. You have to make sure that you spend money wisely, and we don't want handouts. We just want a helping hand, because we have total confidence that when we start getting this ball turning in the right direction, it's going to snowball. We're going to move it forward. And let me point out that our relationship with contractors is very good, and we rely on them in a lot of cases. But a couple things have happened. They're busier than can be.
Absolutely.
It's hard to get a contractor. We have good equipment. We've invested and have newer equipment. Our public works supervisor, Johnny Evans, does a tremendous job because he has a good staff down there. And the development of the right work plan made the difference. I'll give you an example. I'm kind of proud of this. We gave ourselves 60 days to complete the first PW that we started from beginning to end. They had it done in 27.
60 days.
Now, granted, we were pretty close to our dirt pit at that one.
But still, 60-day goal, 29 days completion.
27. And so that
He's
allows
proud of
us,
that 27, rightfully so.
Well, I am. And because now we can go ahead and move to another PW that we know is going to be way down the road, but it's also the furthest one from our dirt pit. So if we can knock that one out right now before they obligate the next one, when we have to go down there when that's obligated, we don't have as much work to do.
Aside from the fact that you've got bragging rights, is there a value to being able to shave a 60-day project to 27 days? I mean, is there some real value to you? I would imagine, if nothing else, if it's FEMA, whoever that's funding this, you're showing them that you're serious, that you're not going to mess around, and that you want to get these things done.
Well, there's some value to it, but here it is. When I say this project's worth $8 million, we're going to get $4 million up front. So the other $4 million, we can start applying to the roads we just completed on our 2 inches of asphalting. Now keep in mind, the money we're saving by doing it ourselves, we don't see any of that until the back end when everything's done. And when that's done, now we have another round to go out and get what we didn't encompass the first time.
Well, isn't that the way that it should be? You don't get rewarded until you've shown what you can do.
No, that's the way I've been taught.
It's the business way.
Sure.
I'm a businessman. You've been in business before. You don't get paid until you've done the job.
Sure.
Unfortunately, all too often we try to spend money that we don't have. We try to borrow our way to success, and you can't borrow enough money to be successful. You guys, and I say it probably more often than our viewers like to hear, but I got to tell you, Jeff, that you've got under you a board of directors that gets it. And this is just one more example. What's going on with COVID-19? Is there anything at all that you can share with us? Trey Hawkins, chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, was here just recently. And I know that you guys are still working furiously on lots of COVID-related projects. Is there anything worth talking about in that direction right now?
Oh, sure. The main thing that I think you'll find a concern in our community is that we don't want people to have a false sense of dread, with this whole thing. So what we really want to find out is what's the real numbers, okay? And when you talk about the cases we've had in our county and you look at the people that recovered, well, it doesn't paint the same picture it did before. So it's important what you put out to the public. It's important what the media puts out to the public. All we're asking for is let's report the right stuff so that people really know what's going on. They deserve that much as taxpayers.
Unfortunately, it doesn't sell newspapers.
Well, I'm okay.
If it bleeds, it leads. You have to be sensational for media to be watched. For clickbait to sell newspapers, what Mr. Hawkins said was that with 100, we'll take the number 100, with 100 reported cases, 80 of them may have already either recovered or have tested negative or some other fashion, but they're still being included in that aggregate number, which is the impressive number. But what you're saying is let's look at who is really being affected by it today.
Well, and yes, sir. And I also want to say that I want to make sure that when they report numbers, and I guess this is for all over the country, but to me, when I look at it is, if you take the rapid test, okay, and it tests you positive, and you go back and you take the longer version where it's more extensive and it says that you're negative, are they now taking that positive off the chart? Or are they leaving it on there? No, they're leaving it on there. So, I just want the right numbers to go to our public.
Wow. Now Trey didn't even mention that.
Well, I think that's the case.
Wow.
Maybe that's my opinion. Maybe
that's pretty disingenuous. I mean, that's obviously fear-mongering. That's driving people to a frenzy.
I want to make sure, let's make sure that what we're telling the people is right.
Makes sense.
But I don't get involved in that too much. I mean, maybe some of that was a little bit my personal opinion, and I should keep my mouth quiet on that. But I will tell you this.
We're just going to share this between you and I. Though nobody else will ever see this information.
Okay. So, but I will say this. When it comes to COVID, we got the CARES Act that came out from federal government. Florida got over $8 billion as their part of COVID recovery. And of course, a portion of that was earmarked for them. The rest of the portion is earmarked for the counties to help the counties. Well, then there was a portion, if you're 500,000 in population or over, you deal straight with the feds because of the amount of money you're dealing with. So when all that was said and done, there was 55 counties left that were eligible for COVID funds. Our disbursement is going to be $4.4 million. So the way the program works is they go ahead and send you $1.1 million, 25% up front. You can spend it to COVID-related expenses that are eligible, and we have a contractor on place making sure that everything we do is eligible. We're not going to get in a situation to where we spend money for something that's not and on the hook paying it back. We will not put ourselves in that position. So everything we're doing is above board and just like it should be. So we have that money. We've received that money. We have to turn in our plan on our expenditures for CARES Act in September. The caveat is we have to spend all 4.4 of that by December 30th.
Wow.
So how do you put together projects that would be eligible that take a little bit longer to put together? So kind of what I'm hearing is that it's more of an accounting thing for them. They don't want any of this money back. So as long as you can have a zero on the books for accounting by the end of the year, you're good. If the projects are obligated and you know they're there, the work just hadn't been performed yet. So that's what we're thinking there. The other thing is we are seeing a little bit hit in the revenues, a lot on our transportation side too, gas taxes and stuff like that. You can't use any of this money at this point. You can't use any of this money for lost revenue. So it has to be applied directly to a COVID-related expense. But the result is we have lost revenue because of COVID, but they're not going to allow us to do that right now. That may change. I don't know.
I know it's not directly under your purview of the county. However, the school district is a part of the county. Would not internet connectivity, broadband, access to the internet fall under that COVID umbrella because of distance learning? I know here on campus, for the better part of 6 or 7 weeks, we had all of our students staying at home trying to work online. That's great. If you live in town and you have cable, if you live someplace where you have strong internet signal, wireless or whatever, that's great. But we have a lot of rural area that does not have internet connectivity. Is there an opportunity for you to partner with that school district, for instance, and be able to work towards that availability? I know you guys are already working on a generally available broadband. Has there been discussion about that?
Well, I don't know if there's been a lot of discussion at this point, but I think the underlying concept would promote that. I know that the superintendent of schools in our school system gets their own set of money. Broadband is very important to them as well, is because of the distance learning that's going on, and it's very important to our hospital, to telemed, because there's patients out there that can't communicate with their doctors online because they don't have the ability to.
That's huge.
It is, and so it touches a lot of different areas that have arisen from COVID. So I would think there could be some positive discussion there. It would certainly help, and it's badly needed. And I do know this: the governor just signed a bill supporting rural broadband in the state of Florida, and I know the federal government is a lot of support from there. So I think everybody is seeing the need to make sure we live in a different world. It's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. To me, it's more like a utility, just like any other utility, because people work from home. People are not going to move to communities if they don't have internet capability.
Well, all school testing, even from the kindergarten up, is done online.
Yeah.
It's election time, probably a good time to talk to your candidates for school board and other school offices. We need this, and the money seems to be available. Lest we paint a picture that appears to make it look that the hospital or health department are disseminating incorrect information, your meeting, you and Mr. Hawkins both met with Karen Johnson from the health department as well as Mike Kozar, CEO of Northwest Florida Community Hospital. You guys are all on the same page.
Sure.
For the same reasons, they want exactly the same thing that you do, which is they want accurate information so that there doesn't result in a sense of urgency or panic that we have all of these new cases.
Sure.
So I want to be sure that our listeners and our viewers know that, and that it's really the media that we're talking about who seem to sometimes want to glamorize or to accentuate the numbers so that it sells papers or it clickbait online.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are on the same page. We had a very good conversation, and I think they're all doing a great job. They've had a lot to deal with. Testing, it was ramped up, and so, there's a lot going on in their world. Our big concern is to make sure, okay, if this is the way it is, well, let's tell the folks this is the way it is and make sure that it's the right message. There's always two ways to look at things, and we just feel like the people deserve that.
If you go to the doctor and there's going to be a need for him to do some kind of procedure that it's going to be uncomfortable for you. Better that he tell you that than that he take you by surprise and you come around and you swing a right hand at him. So again, like you say, honesty, truth in advertising, let them know what the pain's going to be. So often everybody wants to gloss over things that may be somewhat distasteful to talk about, but when people find out about that, that's no good to you. So better that you let people know exactly what's going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not saying that anybody's doing that, but what I'm saying is there's more than one way to look at things. In other words, look, if we have 100 cases and 80 of them are better, well, let's let the community know people are getting better too. And it's not all doom and gloom. As I said before, you know, I'm a half glass full guy, and I don't like to live every day fearing something. So you have to be aware. You have to deal with it. You have to be smart and use common sense, but you don't have to live in fear. So let's just tell people what's going on, and that has seemed to be left out on the national. When I look at the national numbers and the state numbers and everything, I've even emailed and says, how many people is better? You know, because we know. I heard on the news this week, they said 80% of the people that get COVID can go home and treat themselves and be fine. Okay, I thought that was pretty nice to hear, because if you turn on your national media, you might have a total different perception when you watch that show. So we're just Washington County. We're not out trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not, nothing like that. We're just trying to be honest with our folks.
We got a little bit of time left. What else is going on positive in the county right now? We've talked about a little bit about the FEMA stuff and the roads, and also the COVID. Are there some other things going on, percolating in the background that you'd like to let our viewers know about?
Well, we had a lot of projects submitted before COVID hit, and we went to the legislature and had some funded. Of course, I think most people know by now the governor had to veto a lot of his budget to offset the numbers. He's in a tough spot, and we all get that. So, you know, I have a couple projects that's been put on the burner, so to speak, but there's also another way to skin that cat, and we're going to work on that. And we have our regional evacuation shelter project that was getting a lot of traction. Very big project, bigger than usual, especially coming from a county our size, but it had so much traction at the state and the federal level. Again, things slowed down when COVID hit. That's still out there. That facility would have been huge in what we're going through right now. And it'll certainly be huge if we get hit in another storm. If we don't get hit and our neighbors do to the east or the west or in the south, still be huge. That's what it was designed to do. So we got a lot of good things going on, and I think the future for our county is very bright. And I think we have good citizens here that work together and understand that, you know, we don't have to buy into everything that's happening in the world around us. We work in our community together, we get along, and we have a good positive outcome. And I think that's a general consensus in our community. At least I haven't seen anything different.
So often we find ourselves complaining about the fact that we don't have a coastline, therefore our tourism ability is truncated to some extent. We don't border a state line, much like most of the counties in the Panhandle do, so there's some opportunity, so there's fewer opportunities for interstate commerce. But at the end of the day, when we're faced with diversity, those negatives become positives. We become a little bit more insulated from that around us. And again, I go back to what I say all the time. I think we live in a pocket of sanity, surrounded by a lot of craziness sometimes. And the bigger those cities are, the worse it gets. We're very fortunate. We're very blessed to live. We're fortunate to have the kind of people that we have representing us, Jeff. More and more we have to realize that when you make that vote, you're giving that person that proxy to make those decisions on your behalf. If you don't like it, vote them out of office the next time. Otherwise, support will go a long way when these people are making some tough decisions.
Well, I agree with you. And I want to mention one thing before we get done, is that, you know, I was looking, we've been talking about the census a whole lot. And I was looking at the numbers. You've probably seen the same numbers I have, but we're at 51.8%. So, you know, we're not quite at 52%
But that puts us at number 44 for the state.
We're out of the 67 counties, it puts us at 44.
That means we're 2/3 of the way down. That's not something to be proud of.
Well, I'm certainly hoping for a better turnout than that, and I know those numbers will go up a little on their own, self-response, and then it should go up again whenever folks start, getting contacted by the census people.
That means knocking on your door. If you don't want that, you need to reply online.
Yeah, but the emphasis is still there that we've talked about before. Funding is tied to your population. Is tied to your population. So, as I said before, and this is a true number, when the census man told me, I had to ask him, explain that to me. But for every 100 people we don't capture in the census, it'll end up costing $1 million over 10 years to Washington County. So, I start thinking, well, it'd be nice if we only left out 100 people. But the truth of the matter is, we may not capture 1,000. So do the math, and over 10 years, and we're in a competitive situation when it comes to funding. We're in competition with every other county around us. And we're also fighting the bigger counties who have more clout. But we're certainly competing against Holmes and Jackson and these other counties. So if it's tied to population, census is important. I just want to keep reiterating that because I see it more and more every day.
If you take the time to do the math that Jeff just pointed out, that's costing us $1,000 a year for every person that's not counted. That's a lot. That's considerable. $1,000 per year for every person.
They may ask, well, how does that work? How it works is, it's tied back to when we get institutions, or we get the federal government or whoever that wants to fund us money, whether it be through grant or programs or shared monies. They're going to decide what our thresholds are based on our population. So that's what he meant.
Sure.
When he said, so it's real stuff.
It's significant.
It's real stuff. If
you complain about your road not being paved, if you complain about not having that playground, not having those amenities, that extra substation for EMS or fire, it's all directly related to funding. And at the end of the day, a small rural county like us has to depend on state and federal funding to a greater extent than somebody with tourism. If we had a coastline, we'd be in a lot better situation. Bay County, Walton County, Okaloosa County, they don't have some of the problems we have funding because they have that huge tourist base.
They have a huge tourist base.
Hats off to you guys, Jeff. Thanks very much for being here today. More importantly, thanks for the leadership, for the direction that you bring to our county. Thank you for the work you do with our sitting Board of County Commissioners, the relationship you have with our municipalities. That doesn't go unnoticed. We like to complain, but at the end of the day, I like to think that when we get on our knees every single night and thank God for what we have, we include you guys in our prayers. Best of luck going forward. And as we all do, we all need grace on a regular basis. Come back soon.
I will.
Thank you
for letting me be here, Paul.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Our guest today has been Jeff Massey, Administrator for Washington County, Florida. When Jeff comes on, we just grab a rope and hang on because we don't know what direction the conversation is going. Thanks for indulging us. This is cathartic for both Jeff and I think. Hopefully you get something out of it as a part of that process. 2020census.gov. Remember that, 2020census.gov. It's at the bottom of your screen right now. It's also in a hyperlink in the text above this video if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. Go there, register, do your census. It's a constitutional mandate that you must fill out the census. It's worth a lot of money, as Jeff pointed out. $100 fine, potentially, if you don't, if they chose to prosecute you. More importantly, they're going to knock on your door right in the middle of dinner time sometime, interrupt you, and get that information from you. Anyway, do it easy. 2020census.gov. We'll be right back.